At the time, I didn't realize it, but I was drinking so much, like more than I've ever drank before. And it got really dark. It got really dark and really scary really quickly. So March, April, May, I don't really remember much of May, much of June. I love so many things about working at Radio 1. I feel like I'm home because I have wanted to work at Radio 1 since I was a kid. Oh my God, my time at Gaydio prepared me for everything that I'm experiencing now at Radio 1. I wouldn't really be sat here talking to you, I don't think, if it wasn't for Gaydio, because it is such a unique place. Like, I literally banged the door down of Gaydio in 2018 and was like, you need to give me a job. I really want to work here. I think that I could do this, this, and this. And they were just a little bit like, oh God, okay, we'll come in then. And literally brought me in, trained me up, taught me the right things to do, the wrong things to do, picked up some good habits, some bad habits, had loads of really incredible experiences and experiences that I needed to go through as well as a broadcaster. But it's such a special place because that doesn't happen in any other radio station. There's not that same open door policy. And more than anything else, Gaydio showed me that I can be me. It's okay to say I'm gay. It's okay to be gay. People will love you for being gay. And it took about 3 years of me being on air to realize that I could just say how I felt about certain things. Political issues that I'm not allowed to talk about now because I'm at the BBC, but you know what I mean. So I've been sober now for about 13 months, and it was the 1st of September 2020, and we were really in the thick of the pandemic. No one really knew what was going on because we were heading towards Christmas and everybody was really worried. And I, during the first part of the lockdown, had been put on Gaydio breakfast. And I was completely out of my depth. I was trying to juggle doing a national breakfast show every day and reflecting the news, and no one really knew what was happening, and it was so stressful. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. My co-host's sister was really ill and she sadly passed away, and I felt like I was trying to deal with all of that. And at the time I didn't realize it, but I was drinking so much, like more than I've ever drank before. And it got really dark. It got really dark and really scary really quickly. So March, April, May, I don't really remember much of May, much of June. I don't really remember my birthday. My birthday's in July. I don't really remember the leads up to that. My birthday lasted for 2 days. It was chaos. And I was just in this whirlwind of feeling like pressure and pain, deep pain that I'd never felt before. I couldn't see my family. We were all in such a bizarre situation. But what it showed me was that when I was going to work on a Monday, I was looking and suddenly there was like 6 bottles of wine. And I'm like, I didn't drink all of them, but I did. I drank all of that wine. Or like, I wasn't really a big binge drinker when I was a teenager, but I was drinking bottles of vodka. I would never drink bottles of vodka before. So I noticed that there was a problem. And I went a bit off the rails, and I had reached a point. I'd struggled with depression and anxiety as a teenager and as a young adult, but I'd never felt anything like this before because it was scary. It wasn't just like, oh, I feel a bit sad for a couple of days, but I'm going to work through this and push through this. It was like, I feel like this is it now. I feel like this is where I'm at. Like, am I ever going to be happy again? And I was drinking, and it just was getting a bit out of hand. So what that showed me was that I had the capacity to go off the rails and never return. And I thought, I don't really want this. And after Manchester Pride, I had a party, and I woke up on the 1st of September, and I'd been flirting with the idea of giving up drinking. It wasn't like something I just woke up one day and thought of. This was like years and years of thinking and processing and thinking alcohol didn't really agree with me. I just didn't really enjoy it. But it was just part of my life. It was part of being a gay man. It was part of going to LGBT spaces, all surround booze. So I was doing it and being part of it. But I woke up and thought, I'm going to give up drinking now. I'm going to stop for a month. So I stopped for a month, and it's turned into over a year. But I stopped because I wanted to get a job at Radio 1. And I knew I couldn't have both. There were some really dark moments when I was drinking. I got myself into so many dangerous situations, not even before the pandemic. When I look back at my early years of living in London and going from party to party, and I just think I feel, now I'm in therapy. I've been having therapy now for about 6 weeks, and this was a real cry for help, because I can generally sort things out, but I felt like I couldn't sort this out. It was like something I was really stuck with. It was true pain and true trauma. And through therapy, I look back at that younger boy who was, partying in London or whatever. And I feel quite sad for him, that version of me, because I know that he was just caught up and lost in that world. I think that shame and homophobia play a huge part in gay men's relationship with alcohol and drugs, if you take drugs. And I wouldn't really be able to answer that if I hadn't had therapy, because what my therapist showed me was that first, from such a young age, I was hiding myself, hiding everything about me, being conscious of how I walked, how I talked, how I felt. And that we just, as gay men, just become conditioned to behave like this for so long, and forever for some people. And I realized that I didn't like myself. I didn't like the person that was looking back at me at all. I didn't like the voices inside of my head. There wasn't really much that I did like about myself. And I think it broke down a lot of my relationships, friendships, people I worked with, relationships, because they were just feeding into, you're not good enough. You aren't wanted, you aren't loved. That narrative of that, anytime I got a whiff of that, or got a sense of that in my adult life, it was like, well, that's just what I am. Oh yeah, they're right, And I'm working through that now in therapy. And instead of reaching for negative things, it doesn't have to be drink, but reaching for external factors that you're trying to help yourself with, just give yourself some space and some time. And if you still do feel that way, then that's when you need to ask for help. That's when you need to then go to a friend or a loved one, or to ring a helpline. Oh my God, there's so many great helplines out there, and it's okay. I've now learned from my therapist that because I was thinking these thoughts that I have aren't big enough to talk to somebody about. But what you do is you collect all these small thoughts, and then you end up with loads of small thoughts, and that's just as bad as having one big one. I think the most magical thing about this whole journey is how much I feel like I've gained rather than lost. I didn't lose my social life. I didn't lose out on nights out. I didn't lose out on friendships. I've actually gained more than I could have ever imagined. Is that totally down to quitting booze? Probably not. It's just because I got focused, and I've got some really cool people around me with their relationships that, because I don't drink, I've been able to work on. And I feel so supported by my friends and family. I feel supported by Radio 1. And that's the best feeling ever. Yeah, being on the radio is cool, and having hangover-free weekends is cool. But being able to wake up in the morning, anxiety-free, guilt-free, stress-free, that is the real win for me.